The story begins on November 12, 2021, in a city called Bor in the state of Jharkhand, India. There lived a man named Deepak Kumar. That morning, around 9 a.m., Deepak called his friend Roshan to invite him for lunch. Deepak had been wanting to invite Roshan over for a while but had never found the time. Now seemed like the perfect opportunity. At first, Roshan didn't answer the call. Deepak tried several times until Roshan finally picked up. Deepak said, "I've been wanting to invite you to my house for lunch for a long time, but our schedules never lined up. Today is a good day, what do you think? Come over, and let's enjoy a meal together." Roshan appreciated the gesture and replied, "Thank you so much, but I'm not feeling well today. I have a fever and won't be able to come." Deepak insisted, saying, "It's okay, just try to come. We'll be waiting." Eventually, Roshan agreed, despite his illness, saying he would come around noon if he felt better. After the call, Deepak didn't phone Roshan again. Instead, he called Roshan's wife, Radhya. When she answered, he explained, "I spoke with Roshan and invited him for lunch, but he said he's unwell and might not make it. I wanted to check if you could convince him, and you're welcome to join too." Radhya hesitated, seeing her husband wasn't feeling well, but out of politeness, she agreed. She said, "Don't worry, we'll all come around 2:30 p.m. She brought along her husband Roshan, their 20-year-old daughter, and her brother Ankit, who lived with them. When they arrived at Deepak's house, he welcomed them warmly but seemed surprised to see Ankit. Deepak couldn't hide his reaction and asked, "What are you doing here?" Radhya quickly explained, "Ankit lives with us, and since Roshan is unwell and couldn't drive, he brought us here. Is there a problem?" Deepak composed himself and said, No problem at all. You're all welcome." Once inside, they sat in the living room while Deepak went to get water for them. Radhya asked, "Why are you getting the water? Where is your wife?" Deepak explained that his wife, Veena, and their 2 daughters had gone to her parents' house because they didn't expect Roshan to come due to his illness. This struck Radhya as odd. If his wife wasn't home, why was Deepak so insistent on them coming? She suggested, "Maybe we should leave and come back another time when your wife and kids are here." Deepak firmly disagreed. No, you're not leaving. Even if they aren't here, I'll make sure you're taken care of. We'll order food from outside." Despite feeling uneasy, Radhya decided to stay, convinced by her husband and Deepak's insistence. As they waited for the food, Deepak's jovial behavior masked an underlying tension. At one point, Radhya's daughter went to use the bathroom, and Roshan followed to check on her. This left only Deepak and Ankit in the living room. Suddenly, a loud scream came from the living room. Roshan and Radhya rushed back to find Deepak standing over Ankit's lifeless body, holding a bloodied hammer. Ankit had been struck multiple times and was dead. Shocked and horrified, Roshan demanded answers, but Deepak attacked again, this time threatening their daughter with the hammer. Panicked, Roshan and Radhya begged Deepak to stop. Roshan managed to grab Deepak and wrestle the hammer away, giving Radhya and their daughter a chance to escape. Radhya fled with her daughter while Roshan and Deepak engaged in a violent struggle. What had started as a simple lunch invitation had turned into a horrifying nightmare. What drove Deepak to commit such a brutal act? Why had he invited them in the first place? These questions lingered as the chaos unfolded in the house. The reason why Ankit received those blows at the beginning of the attack seemed to be because he felt dizzy, as if he were losing his balance. He couldn't fight properly and kept looking for a place to sit down because he was on the verge of collapsing. When Roshan saw him in that condition, he quickly pushed Deepak hard enough to make him fall, then grabbed Ankit's hand and rushed him out to get medical treatment. Once they reached the hospital, the doctors examined Ankit and found he had skull fractures. They told them that if he had received one more blow, he would have died, and that he needed to stay in the hospital as his condition was critical. As for Roshan, his injuries weren't severe, so the doctors told him he could go home. Afterward, Radia inquired about Deepak's origins and retold everything to Roshan and the others. It turned out that Deepak and Roshan had been friends and had met many times. During that time, Radia, Roshan's wife, had also become acquainted with Deepak's family, and their families had grown close. Then, when Deepak called Radia's parents-in-law to invite them for lunch, things took a shocking turn. When they went to his house, he attacked them with a hammer, intending to harm them all, even targeting Radia's daughter. At present, Radia's brother is in the hospital in critical condition, and Roshan, her husband, has also been injured but is in a stable condition. Radia asked Deepak's father about where his wife, Veena, might be and told him about everything her husband had done. She wanted to know whether they should solve the matter among themselves or resort to legal action. Deepak's father was shocked and said Veena had not been home recently. Radia, however, pointed out that Deepak had lied, saying Veena and their daughters had gone to her parents' house. But Veena's parents were just as shocked by this revelation because Veena had never arrived. This only deepened the mystery. Deepak had always been a calm, kind, and gentle man, never known for arguments or causing problems with anyone. But now, Veena and their daughters were missing, and his actions were completely uncharacteristic. As word of these incidents spread like wildfire through the area, people couldn't believe it. Deepak was a well-known businessman in the region, respected for his kind demeanor. One family, who lived near Deepak's house, had a young teacher named Rinki Joshi, who was 20 years old. Rinki was employed by Deepak to tutor his two young daughters every day. On the day of the attack, Rinki had gone to his house around 11 a.m. and was supposed to leave by 1 p.m. However, she didn't return home, and her mother became concerned. At first, her mother assumed she might have gone to meet her friends or run an errand, but as the evening passed, she grew more worried, especially after hearing about the attack at Deepak's house. She went to Deepak's house, hoping to find Rinki. By that time, Veena's family and relatives had also gathered outside Deepak's house, trying to figure out what to do. The door was locked, indicating that Deepak had fled. Veena's elder brother, Arnaud, decided to break the door and enter. When Arnaud entered the house, he was horrified by what he saw. He came out screaming, saying, "My sister Veena and her daughters are lying on the bed, covered in blood." Everyone rushed inside to confirm, and indeed, they found Veena and her two daughters dead, with blood everywhere in the bedroom. Rinki's mother, fearing the worst, began searching the house for her daughter. While looking, she noticed one of Rinki's shoes near a table, which gave her hope. However, when she searched the bedroom again, she found a large chest hidden under some clothes. When she opened it, she found Rinki's lifeless body. She was dressed from the waist up, but unclothed from the waist down, indicating she had been assaulted before her death. At this point, the police arrived at the crime scene. The house was surrounded by crowds of people, and the police began to investigate. They found the hammer used in the murders, covered in blood, along with several fingerprints and traces of the perpetrator's movements around the house. Autopsy results later confirmed that Veena and her daughters had been struck with the hammer, causing fatal injuries. Rinki, however, had been assaulted after her death, and her time of death was between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m., aligning with when she was at Deepak's house. The police were left with the haunting question, why? Why would Deepak kill his wife and daughters when there was no history of conflict between them? Why would he kill the teacher, Rinki, who had done nothing wrong? And why had he invited his friend and family over, only to attack them as well? The investigation revealed that, earlier that day, Deepak had gone to Veena's family to retrieve her jewelry, claiming she needed it. Though they found it strange, they handed over the jewelry, unaware that Veena and her daughters were already dead at that point. The police launched a manhunt for Deepak, but he kept turning off his phone, making it difficult to track him. They could only guess where he might be, but the search continued. A man was walking. The detective told them, if that's the case, the first thing he did was control the jewelry to sell them so he could get money to support himself. Now they made an announcement on TV, asking any owners of jewelry in the area to report to the police if they saw this man, as he is suspected of committing a murder involving 4 people. This plan bore fruit when one jeweler called the police. He said, "On the morning of the 13th, a man came to me with 109 grams of jewelry that he wanted to sell. I gave him 440,000 rupees for all of the jewelry, which is approximately 50,000 Moroccan dirhams. However, I told him I couldn't pay the full amount immediately as I didn't have all the money. I asked him to come back on Tuesday, and I'd give him the remaining amount." The jeweler continued, "I gave him 340,000 rupees and kept 100,000 rupees for the next day. The man insisted he couldn't return, so he left me his brother's bank account details as a reference. After leaving the bank account information, he left, and I never saw him again." When the police heard this, they placed the brother's phone under surveillance to track any calls. They monitored his communications, hoping to trace the suspect's location. But despite waiting, no calls were made, and the suspect's phone remained off. On the 16th of that month, Deepak deposited money into his brother's account. This wasn't the same money he owed the jeweler but came from another source. Deepak had taken money to a bank in a city called Demeanor, which was about 120 kilometers away from his residence. When the police realized this, they immediately contacted the police in Demeanor, providing them with all the information about Deepak, including his photo. They requested that the local police go directly to the specified bank, which they identified as HDFC Bank, and arrest the man as he was a suspect in a quadruple murder. The local police arrived at the bank, but Deepak had already left. Upon questioning the bank staff, they learned he had recently been there to make a deposit. The police distributed information about him across the city and continued searching. Fortunately, they found him trying to board a bus. He was immediately arrested. On his way to the police station, Deepak told the officers, "If you hadn't caught me, I would have killed myself." It was evident that he had been hiding like a rat and was now trying to evade justice. The police from his hometown traveled to bring him back. Once they reached the interrogation room, they began questioning him. The detective asked, "Why did you kill your wife, your daughters, and the teacher? What did they do to deserve death? And why did you try to kill your friend Roshan, his wife, his daughter, and her brother?" Deepak began crying bitterly and said, "I will tell you everything, exactly how it happened and why I made such decisions." As he narrated the events, the officers were shocked by the cruelty and deceitfulness of this man. Let's go back to 2004, the time when Deepak married Veena. At that time, he worked as an accountant for a company and was doing relatively well. However, when his wife gave birth to their first daughter, and later to their second, expenses increased, and so did the responsibilities. Deepak had a close friend named Roshan. He confided in him about his financial struggles. Roshan, being a kind friend, visited Deepak along with his wife and young daughter to offer advice and support. During their conversation, Roshan suggested starting a side business to generate additional income and help manage the financial burden. Deepak liked the idea but lacked the capital to start a business. After thinking about it for a while, he decided to sell his grandparents' house. The house had been inherited by Deepak and his brother from their father, who had, in turn, inherited it from his own father. Deepak approached his brother and convinced him to sell the house. His brother agreed, and they eventually sold it for 4 million rupees. Deepak received 2 million rupees as his share and used it to start a transport business. Following Roshan's advice, he purchased 2 vans and hired drivers. Initially, the business seemed promising, with everything going well. He started generating income. In 2020, due to COVID-19, many businesses shut down, and many companies closed their doors. You already know that Deepak's project also came to a halt, and he started drowning in debt. On top of that, he had to pay taxes and insurance for the vans. Once again, he complained about the situation to his friend Roshan and asked for advice on what to do. His friend suggested selling the vans to a big company, saving the money until the pandemic subsides, and then buying new vans and restarting the business. Deepak liked the idea again and agreed, asking Roshan to take care of selling them for him and to take a commission for his effort. That's exactly what happened. Roshan sold the vans to a steel company after a short period. He gave Deepak the money, of course, while taking some for his time and effort. But when Deepak saw the sale price, he was shocked. It was much less than he expected. Deepak thought Roshan might have sold the vans at a high price and kept most of the profit for himself, even though there was no evidence of this, and Roshan had only taken his commission. Still, the idea got stuck in Deepak's head, and he became obsessed with the thought that Roshan betrayed him and stole his money. Days passed, and all Deepak could think about was how Roshan was living comfortably, while he himself was drowning in debt. Eventually, hatred consumed him, and he decided to take revenge. Deepak thought deeply about how he could exact his revenge in a way that would hurt Roshan the most. He didn't just want to kill him, he wanted to wipe out all traces of him from this world. But there was one problem: if he killed Roshan, his wife and daughters would still have to suffer. They would face poverty and hardship, and society would look down on them. That's when Deepak decided to kill not only Roshan but also his entire family, so they wouldn't have to suffer after Roshan's death. He planned everything carefully and chose October 12, 2021, as the day to carry out the crime. On that day, he woke up early along with his wife and daughters, as everyone went about their morning routines. Around 8 a.m., he grabbed a hammer and went to the bedroom where his wife was. He struck her with the hammer until she collapsed, then hit her again to make sure she was dead. Afterward, he went to his daughter's bedroom. His eldest daughter was awake, but the younger one was still asleep. He went straight to his eldest daughter and started hitting her with the hammer until she died. The noise woke up his youngest daughter, and she saw her father committing the crime. She tried to run, but Deepak caught her near the door and killed her the same way, striking her head with the hammer. Once he was sure they were all dead, he dragged their bodies to the bedroom, arranged them, and covered them with clothes. Then, he started cleaning the house to remove any signs of a crime. Later, he called Roshan and invited him over for lunch. As mentioned earlier, Roshan was sick and initially refused, but Deepak insisted. When Roshan still didn't agree, Deepak called Roshan's wife and invited her as well, saying that she should bring the kids along. Deepak also expected their children's tutor, Rinki, to come that day. Around 11 a.m., Rinki arrived to teach the girls. She walked into the house and immediately noticed the eerie silence. She asked Deepak about the girls' whereabouts, but before she could react further, he struck her with the hammer and killed her. Not stopping there, Deepak sexually assaulted her corpse and then dragged her body to the bedroom, placing her with the others and covering her with clothes. At 2:30 p.m., Roshan, his wife, their daughter, and her brother arrived. Roshan was surprised to see his brother-in-law, as he hadn't been informed he would be there. At that moment, the crime unfolded as Deepak attacked them one by one. Roshan's brother-in-law tried to fight back and managed to escape, but the others weren't so lucky. After the crime, Deepak fled the scene and spent the night elsewhere. The next day, Deepak went to sell the jewelry he had taken from his wife and Roshan's family. As mentioned earlier, the jeweler offered him 450,000 rupees for the jewelry but only gave him 350,000 up front, promising to send the remaining amount to Deepak's brother's bank account. From there, Deepak fled to a city far from where he lived. It was about 3.5 hours away. Upon reaching the city, he deposited half of the money into the bank, intending to transfer it to his brother so they could have something to live on. The other half he planned to save for his escape to a far-off city in India. However, as mentioned earlier, Deepak was arrested near the bank. In 2023, an investigation into Deepak's activities began. All the evidence was gathered, and along with his confession, the court found him guilty of murdering 4 people, attempting to kill 4 others, and committing sexual assault. Ultimately, he was sentenced to death. After everything that happened, people couldn't help but wonder, Was it true that his friend Roshan had stolen his money, or was it all just in Deepak's imagination? Unfortunately, it turned out that Roshan had stolen the money. But he wasn't alone. Another mutual friend, named Dipro, was also involved in the scheme. Still, none of this justified what Deepak did. To think that he murdered his own daughters, who had no involvement in the situation, shows just how broken and misguided he had become. What's even more shocking is that he killed the innocent tutor, Rinki, who had no connection to him, Roshan, or anyone else involved. He could have simply told her not to come that day and sent her away. But instead, he chose to bring her inside, kill her, and assault her body. Investigators concluded that he likely killed her to cover up his other crimes, fearing she might become a witness. In the end, Deepak received the punishment he deserved. However, many people felt it wasn't enough. After all, he had destroyed the lives of 4 innocent people and brought immense suffering to their families. Deepak's story serves as a chilling reminder of how obsession, hatred, and mistrust can lead to unimaginable atrocities. As this chapter of our thrilling police story concludes, remember, this is just the beginning of an endless world of mystery, suspense, and action waiting for you. If you enjoy unraveling secrets, chasing justice, and diving into the most fascinating investigations, then you're in the right place. The Best Police Stories is your gateway to the most exciting tales ever told. So, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button now, join our community of story lovers, and let's uncover the next great mystery together.